Welcome to Assembly Calendar. I'm Mike Friesen. With us for our program, Assemblyman Mike Fitzpatrick. Mike Fitzpatrick representing the 7th Assembly District in New York State, a district that includes parts of Suffolk County. We thank you folks on Long Island for joining us, and Mike Fitzpatrick, we got to get right to it.
Mike, great to be with you as always.
It is our pleasure to have you here. We've got to get right to where the budget negotiations are here at the state capitol. We have seen the governor propose a budget to the legislature. We've seen the legislature hold hearings on that budget. We have seen, and we're going to show...
still going on, by the way.
Well, now we're into the joint conference committees where the two houses have now passed their own versions of a budget. We're going to show some of your remarks when the Assembly passed their plan. And now we're into these new negotiations, the conference committee. So it seems as if progress is being made and a lot of interesting discussion being had right now.
There is a belief that it will be on time, which is good. What that final product will look like in the last 2 weeks, Mike, is here we are, I think 10 days away. There's always a little bit of high drama, Albany style. So.
Well, I'll tell you what, we just had a meeting of the governor with the legislative leaders a couple days ago here, and they came out and they talked about the progress that was being made. But the governor was asked a question, and I want to start off our discussion today because you've been a little critical. I'll say a little critical about the way the state has performed with its fiduciary duties, and talked a little bit about school districts and the pensions and such. The governor was asked at that press conference a little bit about, are there going to be more cuts to education, more teacher layoffs, more cuts of athletic programs, things along that line. Let me show you a little bit of his response and then get your reaction to that.
When they say, well, we're going to lay off teachers and we're going to hurt children, that's basically the threat in this discussion, right? If you cut the education budget, you're going to hurt children. That's their premise. No. I'm saying find a 2.7% efficiency in the education budget that has gotten double-digit increases and has gotten amazing increases over the past decade. Find an efficiency. Like every other family in this state has had to find an efficiency. Like every other business in this state has had to find an efficiency. Like this state government is going to take a 10% reduction. 10% reduction. And we're asking the schools to take a 2.7%. Well, they're going to hurt the children. Manage the school system. Reduce the waste. Reduce the fraud. Reduce the abuse. Well, we don't have any. I don't believe it. I was the Attorney General for 4 years. I investigated school districts. I investigated double dipping. I investigated pensions. I investigated procurement contracts. I know there's waste and abuse in school districts. And I know there's 2.7%. They'd have to say, we're perfectly managed. We are the Swiss watch of organizations. You can't find 2.7% waste or body fat in this organization. No, it's a threat. It's a game. It's a game. They want to oppose the cuts politically, so what do they say? I'm going to hurt your child.
What is your reaction to what the governor had to say there?
My reaction, he is absolutely right. He is absolutely right. I agree with him 100%. It is so refreshing to hear that kind of direct, strong leadership from a governor to an organization that has enjoyed a record increase in spending over the last 10 years, as he said. There are inefficiencies out there. The frustration that some in school administration, for example, this past Friday, I had the pleasure of having lunch with the Suffolk school business officials. And they're frustrated because they know how the rules constrict or restrict what they can do. And therefore, we can only deal with this little piece of the pie instead of going after this. Well, that's what we have to change here in Albany. And I told them, they said, what can we do in the short term? And I frankly said, there's not a whole lot we're going to be able to do in the short term. They're very uncomfortable with a tax cap. My response is, if we don't have a tax cap, if we don't have that as a mechanism to force the players to the table to make the changes necessary, it will never happen. So we have to get through this brick wall, if you will, and we've got to break through that. And that is a very painful, unpleasant process. But once you're through, things get better. And we've put ourselves in this position over the years. As spending has increased in total, so has the administration. All right, so has the bureaucracy. It has grown right along with it. Is there pension abuse? Absolutely there's pension abuse. Take a look at Newsday, our local paper. They've run stories about superintendents, double dipping, retire, rehire. The attorneys were part of the gravy train too, getting in on the act. There was a story told to me by someone who was in the room, a school superintendent advocating a new hire for a new assistant superintendent, and the reason given was, I need a place to promote these people. Not because of merit or the need for it, but I need a place to promote people to keep them happy. Why? Because they're all in the defined benefit pension system too. And people don't realize how the defined benefit pension system, it's the root of our problems, in my view, in politics, but it's also a very big part of the problem in education as well, in administration as well as in the teaching corps. Everybody knows how much they're going to make when they retire. Everybody knows how to navigate the system to move up that scale so they maximize their retirement benefit. And when they tell you that's not motivating them, they're not telling the truth. All right? It's not all about the children as they tell you. It's, Albert Shanker, the great UFT, the militant labor leader in the 60s, he said it best. He said, when students pay union dues, that's when I fight for their interests. So we are having, in a sense, Mike, our Wisconsin moment. All right? When this governor is saying no to what has been one of the most, if not the most powerful special interest group in the state of New York. You're inefficient. We have to create, or we have to eliminate those inefficiencies. And the only way we are going to improve our standing, which is the last place out of 50 states, 50 out of 50 states in terms of business climate, the only way we are going to improve our lot and get people working again and create an economy that employs people again, not in government, but in a private sector, in the private sector, is reducing and eliminating the inefficiencies at every level of government. This governor is 100% right.
You raised that specter of a Wisconsin moment when you stood up and addressed the New York State Assembly as it was passing its version of a budget this year.
Which increased taxes and spends more money. What else is new from the Assembly majority?
And you really do kind of have to say to yourself, well, I thought it was all about revenues being down and cutting back on spending. If you listen to the governor, that's the message he's giving. Right. But when it came time for the Assembly to pass its budget to be able to put something out on the table for negotiation, their budget seemed to be a little bit different. Let's go and take a look at what Mike Fitzpatrick said that day in the New York State Assembly chamber.
We are doing something wrong as a state. We're spending too much, taxing too much, borrowing too much. Something is wrong. The business model of the state of New York and its municipalities is broken. I don't care whether it's the MTA, whether it's OTB, whether it's Suffolk County or Erie County, something is wrong. And if we don't attack the structural problems that we are having, whether it's pension reform, retiree health care reform, we are severely underfunded in our pension obligations, and I don't care what the comptroller says. If you use a market value method of valuing assets of our plan, we are only about 60% funded. That is troublesome. We have put nothing aside as a state or a county or any municipality for retiree health care obligations that total up to $205 billion. And the demographic wave that's coming is going to drive those costs up. My home county, Suffolk County, is going to participate in the borrowing scheme that was passed in this chamber not long ago. And guess what? Their pension costs are going to go up $40 million. That's with the borrowing, which is only going to drive the total cost up higher. Something is very, very wrong. And when we do address those structural problems, ladies and gentlemen, we will have our Wisconsin moment in New York State, because the special interest groups are not going to want to change the current business model. It is going to drive us over the edge. We are a once great state in a state of decline, and that rate of decline is going to accelerate unless we change our ways. Please vote no on this bill. Thank you.
And frankly, what you're saying is it's going to be a good thing when New York State has its Wisconsin moment, because it shows the state is truly going to be serious about going down the right path.
It is inevitable that we are going to have our Wisconsin moment, for the simple reason that the structural problems are not being dealt with. What I like about what Governor Cuomo was saying is, look at who he is. You know who his father was. You know what his father's record was. He was a very liberal guy. He sees the world differently. It's a different generation. But when you look at the fact that he had worked for his governor, he knows state government inside and out, he was attorney general, investigated all of these entities, as he said, this is a guy who knows where all the bones are buried. And to use a baseball analogy, there isn't a pitch you can throw him that he can't hit here. So he's standing firm because he knows. Knowledge is power. He has the knowledge. A lot of us have that knowledge that we know there are inefficiencies in all of these governmental entities. Nassau County is another perfect example. They want to raise taxes. They were caught trying to slip some language into the Senate side of the budget to allow them to raise the sales tax without legislative approval in Albany. And guess what? They removed it because they were caught. All right? Now, Nassau County is going to have to do what Suffolk County has done, become more efficient. Levy has led the way. Mangano is still tied to the old way of doing things. They have to change. New York State has to change. This is not a game. There is some very serious restructuring that must occur. And the longer we put it off, now the governor has said, I have to get this budget done and I want it on time. After that, he wants to look at other inefficiencies, whether it's the MTA, pension reform, and other. Those are the two he mentioned to us at our breakfast meeting with him at the mansion. But once this budget is done, there is a lot more work to be done. You've got to get the tax cap in. You've got to get players to the table. You've got to drive change. If the governor doesn't lead, it will not happen. And I applaud him for what he's doing. I support him wholeheartedly in moving the state in this direction. The sooner we get there, the better off all of us will be. All of those special interest groups that think they're going to be harmed, what they don't realize is that the economic trajectory that this state is already on, we are going off a cliff, and they are leading the way. And if we don't change, once we change, and it will happen, it will be painful, but it will happen. When that happens, we will have a growing economy again, and we will get out of last place.
For example, you hear people say, well, we really can't have a property tax cap in New York State until we get mandate relief.
It's a false argument. The only way you'll get people to the table is to have that cap. I've told this story many times. I had the pleasure of sitting at a dinner with a gentleman from Massachusetts who happened to be an assessor for a town in western Massachusetts. And after we introduced ourselves to each other, I said, "Hey, let me ask you a question. How do you guys like Proposition 2.5?" And he said, "We love it. We love it." He says it makes them think before they spend. And their Proposition 2.5, that's a 2.5% limit on their increase. That applies to every governmental entity. So it works over there. It really does.
No, Massachusetts was known as Taxachusetts for a very long time, as was New Jersey.
That's right.
We're seeing a sea change, a shift, if you will, in a lot of our neighboring states.
They've improved their economic lot greatly by getting a handle on the explosive growth of government. We have to do the same thing here. Our Wisconsin moment will come.
And there you have it. That's going to be our last word for today. If you folks want to reach out to your representative, you can contact Mike Fitzpatrick at his office in Smithtown, dial 724-2929, or drop an email at the address you see there on the bottom of the screen. Mike Fitzpatrick, always interesting. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks, for spending your time. We'll hope to see you soon for our next edition of Assembly Calendar.